What is up, ProGuides family, and welcome back to another episode of the best champions to main for this patch. In this video, we're going to be going over the best performing champions, but with the lowest ban rate, so you have a decent amount of time to play them without the risk of them really getting nerfed next patch. And for our question of the day, which champion mains are you guys most afraid of? I don't know about you guys, but when I see a Riven main with a lot of mastery points, I'm just like, oh god, get me out of this game right now. Whenever I play jungle against a Riven main, I always usually camp that lane and then just hopefully she just doesn't get any kills. She's terrifying. So when you see a Riven main in your game, make sure to stay 6 feet away and wear a mask. All right, let's get into the video. Shen is going to be our first pick in the top lane. He is almost always a reliable pick who's just a great choice to have in your pocket, especially for players who find themselves auto-filled in the top lane. He's a relatively low skill floor champ, which means he's accessible to a lot of people, but he's also rewarding for players who put the time in on him. He is a tank, but he does pretty good damage with his empowered Q strikes, making him a decent duelist who doesn't necessarily have to trudge through lane like other dedicated tanks do. His E isn't the longest range CC in the game, but it's reliable in the right hands, and it's an excellent tool for counter-engaging and disengaging after you just used your ult and your W to save your teammate's life. All in all, Shen's a well-balanced pick that Riot barely ever messes with in the patch notes, and his ability to affect the map with his game-saving ults earns him a solid spot in the meta. I do want to caution people playing Shen though, if you don't have good macro sense, he probably isn't the best pick for you, but if you are aware of what's going on in the map, which allies are, and when you should be using your ultimate, then he is actually quite a good pick for you guys. Urgot is our second choice for top lane mains. After a bit of a hiatus from the meta, Riot gave Urgot the love he needed, mostly because they want to sell that new skin line, let's be honest. And he's now back in the top lane harassing tankier picks. For now at least though, people aren't throwing him any bans, so it's a good time to invest some games in learning him. He's a sustained damage top laner who used his Q to poke and slow enemies for engages. His E is a short dash that also gives him a shield before he destroys whoever he comes in contact with, and his W is an iconic machine gun that wears targets down low enough to be executed by his ult. Whereas some top lane champions like a more utility-based approach to helping their team, Urgot takes a more murdery approach, and he's a great choice for anyone looking to take their games into their own hands and be a carry threat all on their own. Just make sure that you're utilizing his shotgun knees as much as you can. They are absolutely insane. And also, if you decide to pick this guy up, just get the skin. No one will judge you on the rift, don't worry. Good old Jax is pick number 3. Yet another champion who, for better or worse, Riot rarely touches. Jax is a champion we've all been traumatized by. God, this guy in the late game, he just 1v9s everybody. He's one of the best scaling fighter type champions in the game, and he's a split push monster. In our OP pick and ban video, we mentioned him as a viable alternative to Fiora, and for those of you who want all the fun of an unmatchable duelist without having to worry about what Riot does to their flavor of the month champion, then this one is for you. The league meta doesn't always favor split pushers, but right now it does, and a talented Jax can always win games anyways, regardless of the meta. His mobility with his Q can be used for gap closing damage or to evade danger, but his W is an auto attack reset that hits like a truck. His E not only negates all auto attack based damage, but returns it back to the sender with a neat little stun on top. His R is nothing flashy, but the stat boost he gets from activating it, along with his third hit passive, makes Jax plenty formidable, especially in a meta where snowballed leads are so dangerous. Anybody in gold or lower, just learn this guy. Even if you guys are behind, he can come back come the 25-minute mark and just absolutely demolish. Split pushing is also just a great way to fall back on. If your team is just YOLOing in and whatever, then you can always just rely on just split pushing, getting objectives, creating pressure by yourself, and hopefully carry some more games. Okay, now moving on to the jungle. Our first pick in the jungle is going to be Graves. Honestly, I have no idea how this champion is flying below the radar right now. He is absolutely ridiculous. His ability to kite camps means he has one of the healthiest clears in the game, and his AoE auto attacks along with his Q's explosion radius means he clears them quite quickly as well. Add in the fact that he has a low cooldown dash that helps him stack his passive's free defensive stacks, and you're looking at arguably the best power farming duelist in the game. Graves will clear his camps, invade your jungle, kill you, and then never stop killing you. Every time Graves enters the meta, it's a total nightmare for anyone who doesn't play him. i.e. me, and for some reason most of the player base hasn't picked up on his power yet. Watch a well-farmed Graves ult you and your team for half your health. You won't be sleeping on him anymore. As an added bonus, Graves is also one of the best options for the roster of junglers who want to carry themselves rather than needing to get their carries fed. So the agency he offers is invaluable. It feels like we've brought Warwick up a lot recently, but it's really not our fault that he's pick number 2. It's been a few months now since the new season started and the new jungle changes took effect, but Warwick has been mostly untouched, so he's still bringing the same valuable skill set to the table. He's got a fast, healthy early clear, and he's great at invading and keeping the enemy jungler down. Plus, with all the healing built into his kit through his passive and his Q, he's pretty good at sneaking early dragons and heralds as well. His ganks before 6 are nothing to write home about, but they're not awful with his W's move speed steroid and his E's defensive stat boosting fear. Once he has his ult though, ganks get a lot easier. It's hard to argue with an unstoppable wolfman leaping at your throat from the shadows. Since objective control is the name of the game right now, we probably won't see Warwick fall in value unless Riot does something about him directly, and being that very few people deem him worthy of a ban, that probably won't be for some time. I actually picked up Warwick recently and he is very easy to play. However, there are some tricks that you need to know about him, like pressing your E first and then holding your Q down and then getting behind them and then letting that fear from your E fear them back into your teammates. That one was actually pretty hard to master. It took me a little bit of time to do that one. And if you're curious about picking up any of these champions and knowing what makes them tick, all the pro players on ProGuides have your back. So all you have to do is just hire a coach and they'll teach you the ins and outs of all these little tricks on each champion. Nunu is pick number 3 for the jungle, and he's been a great champion to main for quite a while. Before his rework, Nunu was kind of like the training wheel champion for new junglers before they moved on to bigger and better champions. But after his rework, Nunu became a much more viable pick while still retaining his unmatched objective control. Like Warwick and Graves, Nunu has an extremely healthy clear, but unlike Warwick and Graves, Nunu is geared more towards supporting his team through CC and strong ganks. And you guys can carry by supporting your team. It just takes a little bit more thought. You just gotta figure out who's most likely to carry your game and then just feed them. His Q does a large chunk of true damage to monsters, so when you stack it with Smite, it's pretty hard to lose Smite battles and get objectives stolen from you. His W is a snowball that lets him roll his way into ganks, his E is an AoE root, and his ult is a large channeled explosion of magic damage. Nunu isn't the best skirmisher in the world, but he's definitely worth his weight in dragons, and that alone has kept him at the top of the tier list for a while now. He just doesn't feel oppressive to play against, so Riot leaves him alone. Put a few games in on Nunu since he's super easy, and eat your way up the ladder. Our first pick in the mid lane is Zilean. Zilean is a great champ to main for players who don't necessarily mind taking a back seat in their games, and instead prefer to win by pulling the strings behind the scenes. Don't get the wrong idea though, Zilean is a more supportive champion, but his bombs do a lot of damage. Especially when you double stack them for an AoE stun, because guess what? Your teammates do damage as well. This also helps Zilean have a pretty safe laning phase, and after he clears a wave, he's free to roam to his side lanes and make some trouble there with his E's movement speed manipulation. Having the option to make your enemies extremely slow or your allies turbo fast is pretty nice. But of course, his most important ability is his ult, which lets him prevent his allies from dying. Oh, that's pretty convenient. The low cooldown on this ultimate ability makes Zilean pretty frustrating to play against, so if you're someone who takes more pleasure from your enemy's frustration than from your own flashy plays, then this guy is for you. Anivia is our second pick for the mid lane, and she's been pretty reliable for a time now. Anivia mains are a rare breed, but you'll know them when you see them. Froggen, I'm looking at you. Anivia is quite possibly the biggest case of glass cannon in the game with a 100% AP ratio on her Q if you let it run through a target and then detonate it on them, and another 100% AP ratio on her E when she uses it on targets affected by her Q stun or her ult's max size. Her ult is a large AoE field that slows enemy champions and grows to deal more damage over time, which makes it a great wave clear and sieging tool. What separates the mediocre ult spamming wave clear Anivias from the Froggen tier Anivias though, is the usage of her W's wall. Anivia's wall has such a ridiculous amount of playmaking potential. You can use it to peel, make picks, deny objectives, siege, and best of all, you can use it to interrupt enemy channels and movement abilities. When you're learning Anivia, you're gonna get flamed hard for your bad walls. Because guess what? A lot of your teammates will get caught in those walls and they'll be like, what the hell? You just separated me from my support and now I'm dead. But out of the ashes come the phoenix, and she's worth the salt, sweats, and tears, guys. All it takes is about a month on her and you guys will become the phoenix. The trade-off here is that you're one of the slowest champions in the game and one of the smallest health bars in the game as well, using one of the mana-thirstiest kits in the game, relying on one of the slowest skill shots in the game as well. So with phenomenal cosmic power comes itty-bitty error space. Syndra is our third pick in the mid lane, and she's a force to be reckoned with. Syndra is a champion that Riot struggled to find good balance for initially, but she's been around for a while now and it seems like they found a relatively balanced place for her in the game. The keyword there is relatively. On the low, she's sleeper strong and she's bringing a lot to the table. Syndra is a long-ranged mage who can use her Q to poke or clear waves, especially when paired with her W slingshotting orbs and monsters alike. She scatters her orbs out in front of her and anyone they collide with gets stunned. This means that when there's a teamfight happening in the jungle and choke points, Syndra has the opportunity to stun multiple members of the enemy team at once. And the damage that stun comes with isn't bad either. After Syndra's cycled through her kit, she's bound to have at least 1 or 2 spare orbs lying around, and her ult will make any squishies unfortunate enough to be in her line of sight painfully aware of just how lethal those spare orbs are. Syndra is a great, well-rounded champion, but she does require a good amount of practice to really get the balls rolling. So try her out as your new main and see how it feels. Landing multi-man stuns off her E and then deleting carries with a point-and-click burst is not only useful, but it feels so good. God, it feels good. But sadly, I can only do that maybe once in every 10 games. She is kind of hard, to be honest. Unless you're really mechanically gifted, which is not like me, then you're gonna have to put in quite a bit of time learning her. All my friends who play Syndra, they say she's well worth it. Okay, now moving on to the bot lane. Kai'Sa is our first pick for the bot laners on patch 10.7. She is another champion that Riot's historically had a hard time balancing, but lately she's been in a pretty good spot. Whereas Vayne is OP pick or ban status because of her max health damage, Kai'Sa is still sleeper OP for the same reason. Partially because Kai'Sa's build path are so versatile with what she can do. Right now though, the build we're showing you on screen is the most effective in the broadest set of scenarios, and outside a few niche settings, it's your best bet. Kai'Sa is a late game hyper carry, but Hail of Blades gives her enough early game power to be a contender in the laning phase as well. She has a slew of abilities from a bursty Q barrage to a long range execute on her W to a move speed and attack speed steroid on her E that, by the way, makes her invisible. I cannot undersell this champion. Never mind the fact that her ult is an excellent repositioning tool that for some reason includes a huge shield as well. Kai'Sa may not be as popular as Vayne right now, but her ability to bring a Zhonya's into her item build makes her a great champion to have in your pool for dealing with dive-heavy comps as well. And there's nothing worse than being an ADC against a dive comp. That is just insult to injury, guys. Okay, now on to Jhin. Jhin is our second pick for the bot lane, and he's as lethal as ever. Jhin is a particularly interesting champion because of his 4-shot passive, which prevents him from gaining attack speed, but grants him 1 free Giga crit every 4th shot that also executes. Packing such a large punch might suggest that the focus of Jhin is his damage, but while it's definitely a feature, Jin's true strength lies in the utility he offers his team. His long-range W root is great for setting up picks in combination with his invisible E traps, and his ult can be used to engage fights or even just be used to provide cover for a retreat. You know, aside from the more obvious usage of using it to destroy everyone in his path. His early damage carries him through the laning phase, but it's the utility that makes him valuable in the later stages of the game. So put some time into Jhin and polish up those skill shots. Deadeye Jhin players who land those Ws are so valuable. Game changing, honestly. Varus is going to be pick number 3 for the bot lane, and it's the Varus your mother warned you about, Lethality Varus. The build is key here, since Varus is a champion whose playstyle changes depending on what you're building. The lethality playstyle is less about shelling out auto attacks like they're candy, and more so about sending hard-hitting Qs at the enemy team and chunking them for a gut-wrenching amount of health. The reason this particular playstyle has become prevalent is because objective control is so important. Much like Jhin, getting to an objective first means you get to post up and make the enemy team wade through a barrage to get to you. While they're dancing around the objective posturing, they'll also have to dance around your Qs or get sent back to the base. Lethality Varus is just so good at objective control, and he's such a good siege champion, and it feels so good to land those juicy Qs on enemy carries. Alright guys, that's it for ADC. Now we're going to move to support. Our first pick for support this patch is Nami. Now, normally we try to avoid repeats between this list and our OP pick or ban list, but somehow Nami is just simultaneously OP and underplayed and underbanned. She has a silly win rate right now. It's just silly, guys. It's just so silly. It's too silly. So it's a great time to main her. For the uninitiated, she has an AoE stun on her Q, a W that bounces between multiple allies and enemies, healing and hurting them respectively, an E that augments auto attacks and abilities with some extra damage in a slow, and guess what? To top it all off, she has a tidal wave ult, and it's as wide as the river itself. She has an exceptionally strong laning phase, and in skilled hands, she's a great choice in teamfights as well. You just have to be careful with your positioning. Your friends are not going to think you're cool by playing Nami, by the way. That is the one bad thing about her. She's just not cool in any way. But she's getting you free low, and that's all that matters. My friend Maokai, a guy who I actually picked up a few patches ago in the top lane, is also a super broken support. There are plenty of reasons to start maining Maokai support, be it the fact that he's extremely durable, or the fact that he has a metric boatload of CC and utility, or the fact that his saplings provide tons of damage and lane pressure. Just throw him in the bush, leave him alone, and they're gonna deal so much damage. Sooner or later, I'm gonna give you guys a quick little tip. Let me whisper it in for you. Let me whisper this for you. Riot will nerf Nautilus. Did you get that? Yes, Riot will nerf Nautilus. And when they do, guess what? Maokai support will be there to fill his place. And there's no better time to do that right now. Just play him while he's still really good, but guess what? He's going to be super OP soon. They're going to nerf Leona. They're going to nerf Nautilus. It's an inevitability. Get in while the getting's good. Learn Maokai right now. Janna is our final pick on today's list, and if you've ever played against an experienced Janna, you know how infuriating she can be to deal with. Janna is one of the peeliest champions in League with a tornado that knocks up potential assailants, a W that gives her great trading power in lane, and extra peeling power with a slow out of lane, a pretty hefty shield that also grants bonus AD, and an ult that repels enemies and heals her allies. She basically makes it so the enemy team has to ask permission to even breathe next to her carries. And with objective control being such a core aspect of success in the current meta, the zone control and disengage she offers means the game is forced to happen according to Janna's pacing. If she has the right vision set up, nothing will happen if Janna doesn't want it to happen. So start practicing her right now. Just don't make the mistake of playing her too passively in lane. She's a monster in lane trades, and when you play her right and give yourself a snowballing carry to protect, you guys are probably going to win. That's it for our video on the best champions to main this patch. If you think we missed one, why don't you put it down below? We'll take a look. We read all the comments. I've also been talking with a lot of you guys on Instagram as well. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach me on there. And once again, if you guys are interested in getting better at League of Legends, let's say you want to main a new champion like one of these, go to ProGuides.com, find a challenger coach, they'll help you out, no problem. All right, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck your next few games, and I'll see you on the Rift.